all that stuff, let's get into, we're going to transition now into another topic, which is going to be learning. How do we learn? Okay, so we're going to talk about classical conditioning today. So, I don't know why it doesn't let me do this. Okay, if you would, please take a moment. We're going to, I want to just give you a quick heads up here. I told you in 10 days I'm taking 6 wrestlers, a couple of adults to France, Netherlands, and England for I believe the 14th, we'll come back the 23rd for 10 days. I'll be gone. Okay? And then I come to school until May 3rd. So, not very many days. And then my wife and I are going to Barbados.
Let's just say this weekend.
Right on. Did she love it?
Yes.
All right. So, I'm going to Barbados. And you might ask, how? And I would respond, Waller Catholic money. All right? That's how. That sounds a joke. But, okay. So, yeah, I'm going to be gone for a little while. But I'll be on the beach. Okay? How many people have been on the beach? Right on. So, we're going to do a little visualization tool. All right? So, in order for this visualization, just stay with me. Bear with me, all right? If you would, please close your eyes for a moment. I want you to go to that beach that you've been on, right? It's relaxing. I'm going to picture Barbados, okay? Our feet are in the sand. It's very warm. Getting too hot almost, actually. Maybe you're with your family. Maybe you're with your friends, right? Maybe you smell the food. You have the grill right there. Whatever it is, I want you to go to that experience or that beach that you've been at before. I want you to feel that relaxed feeling, right? And you're starting to get really hot. In fact, you may even be getting sunburned at this point. So now you decide it's time to go cool off in the ocean or the sea, wherever you're at. All right, so you get into the water and the waves are hitting you, right? You're feeling that. It's great, right? But you start going deeper and farther out into the water. And then you start to get this funny feeling. Okay, so what's happening? Now, there's a reason why you associate shark with what we just did here. And we're going to talk about that today, all right? So, it is going to actually be from classical conditioning. So if you would, please open up your notebook. This is a little lower than what I'm used to. Usually it's like higher, but that's all right. Now, our focus today is on how do we learn. And since all of us in this room are in the business of learning, right? All of us are, myself included, we should have a little bit of a background into how we learn. All right? So, basic, easy definition, what is learning? Learning is any relatively permanent change in behavior as a result of past experiences or practice. All right? So, easy way to associate learning. Obviously would be school or whatever, but sometimes it's easier to relate to a sport, right? So, like in wrestling, we go over a new move, and then we practice it over and over and over again. That becomes a permanent behavioral change, which is learning. Now, if you have changes due to growth or maturation, is our word up there, that is not learning. Okay? That is not learning. Learning is when we change our behavior based on past experiences. For example, right? Let's see, do I have a good one? Yeah, can't really think of one. Maybe we'll use it, okay? I might have already shared this with this class. I can't remember. Sometimes these classes all join together. Declan, my son, who's 6 years old, when he was 3 years old, I was changing the wiring harness on my Ford Explorer so that I could pull my boat. But I needed electricity to the trailer. So I was working on that, and I had this tiny little tool that I used to unclip the wiring harness. I set it down next to the curb, because we were in an apartment at the time. My 3-year-old came up and grabbed that little tiny wrench, and I didn't notice, I didn't even see it. And then he went and he stuck that wrench into a light socket. Right? Guess what happened? He got shocked. Right? He started to cry. Guess what he does not do at all anymore? He doesn't mess with sockets. Right? He does not mess with sockets. So he learned. Right? He learned if you mess with the socket, then you get electrocuted. All right? Now, this kind of raises a question here. How do we learn? Right? We talked about already in our last slide past experiences being pretty dang important to that. Okay? Now, I want to take a moment and just look at this quote up here. Okay? It reads, "Give me a dozen healthy infants, well-formed, in my own specialized world to bring them up in, and I'll guarantee to take any one at random and train him to become any type of specialist I might select, be it a doctor, a lawyer, an artist, merchant, chief, and yes, even a beggarman and thief, regardless of his talents, penchants, tendencies, abilities, vocations, and race of his ancestors." What does this mean here? What's this guy saying? And do you agree with it? Now we all sit in silence. Come on, folks, what we got? What's this guy saying? He can teach anyone to do anything. And if we had this crazy world, I could take any baby that is healthy, put them in my own laboratory and raise that baby, and I can mold them regardless of if their parents were, wealthy or, criminal or whatever, drug addicts, and based on my environment, I could teach them to be a doctor, whether or not their parents could read or write or not. Do you agree with that statement? Charlie says no. Connor says yes. We better have a no because or yes because class instead of a no or yes class. So no because was first.
I would say no because you also have to have genetics too to be really, really good at something. I bet if you're an NFL athlete or in the NBA, your parents are probably super tall or have a lot of athletic ability. Or let's say like a doctor, I bet your parents or grandparents are really smart and experienced in that. Because that kind of carries the line. You can't just do something somebody and expect to be good at it. You have to have some sort of genetics.
Connor.
I don't think any of mine is just given. Obviously you're not gonna be born a doctor. No one's born a doctor, so you have to be raised that. You have to be raised that way, and then work yourself up and away throughout your life to put yourself in a position to be one of those specialties.
Okay, now we've got a fence, a line in the middle here, and I want everyone to jump on the side. Who agrees with Charlie? Who agrees with Connor? So you guys are saying that we can take literally any baby, put them in this laboratory, and we can have them become anything that we want them to be. If we surround them with criminal activity, they're going to be a criminal. Right? So this is talking about the environment being very influential. We're going to talk about this, something around these lines for quite a while in this class, actually. What is more important? Is it nature or is it nurture? All right, so let's go now to... this whole focus is going to be on learning. We know that learning is any permanent change in our behavior, right? But how do we stimulate learning? How can we learn? There are 3 types, 3 things that we can do to stimulate learning. And pretty much every single thing in your entire life can be summed up on these 3 bullet points up here on learning. Right? So the first part is rewards. Think about anything in your life, right? Why right now are you taking notes? Why are you sitting? Why are you not talking? Some of us are on our Apple phones, our watches, and texting. Okay. Why is it that you are behaving as I want you to? Any clue? What's up? That's what's right? I think it's the answer. Yes, ma'am.
That's what we were taught to do.
When?
Preschool. Pre-K.
From the very moment you were born. Last night at 4:30, I took Declan and my little monsters to the museum, the Mississippi River Museum. Right? Declan hadn't slept yet. They didn't take a nap. He's like 6 years old, so he doesn't really need a nap. But on the drive home, oftentimes he falls asleep. And then we wake him up, and he's an absolute monster during that time. It's terrible. Okay, so he is a complete D-head to his brother and sister when he doesn't get a nap. So what he was doing at the Mississippi River Museum last night is he kept going up to the aquarium and knocking on the door, scaring all the fish. Right? We tell him like over and over and over again, stop, stop. Okay, that is an example of how you have been molded, right? In proper behavior in class. Think about the time, when you were first, second grade, right? If you want to talk to class, you got to raise your hand. If you want to go to the bathroom, you got to raise your hand, right? You have been conditioned from a very long time. In fact, right now, in Holy Family Schools, anyone have a little brother or sister? Okay? They have this system of care coupons. Anyone ever heard of this? You should start it. If you do something nice for someone, then you get a care coupon. Right? And then you build this bank of care coupons, and once you get a certain amount, you can cash them in for prizes. And you can get an out of uniform dress code. So what is that? Right? You're nice to people, so you are given a reward. Right? You studied for your test. What's going to be your reward?
Good grades.
An A, right? So we do this already, right? So they give care coupons, we give grades, right? If you don't study for your test, I'm going to give you a punishment. Guess what that punishment is? I'm going to literally slap you in the face. Yes, no. Okay, your grade, of course. So grades are just operant conditioning. We're going to talk about this idea in our next class. Rewards or punishments. Think about, does anyone here have a curfew? What people don't have a curfew? I better give your old man a call. What's going on? So what time do you go home, young lady?
Well, when I'm tired.
When you're tired? What's the latest you're ever going home?
Oh, the latest I've been on.
Yeah.
But I tell them where I am. Like, 2.
All right. Interesting, young lady. Okay, so let's say that, you got a curfew, whatever it is, midnight, and then you come home at 2 o'clock because you're hanging out with the redhead over here, okay? And you go home, what are your parents going to say? You missed curfew. Right? You get punished. Right? Maybe they take your phone away or whatever. Okay, however your parents punish you, that's what they could do, right? This is the same thing. Parenting is just that literally any and every aspect of your life is because of conditioning, right? This one is one that we're going to talk about today, classical conditioning. It's kind of an interesting topic. It gets a little goofy in some regards, but we'll get this thing going. So here is what classical conditioning is. Here's our definition of classical conditioning. Okay, classical conditioning, and this isn't going to make any sense until I give you a whole bunch of examples and videos and all that stuff. So during this part, if you would just stay with me, because I know it can be like, I have no freaking clue what's going on. right? But it'll make sense at the end, I promise. We'll do so many things that it'll be good. So classical conditioning is the learning process in which associations are made between an unconditioned stimulus and a neutral stimulus. All right? Right there with that, we have absolutely no clue what that means. So let's break into this. We're going to give you a couple of key ideas that will still be kind of unrelatable, but then we'll put a story to it, and you'll be able to understand it, I hope. All right, so classical conditioning is another way that we learn. And this happens all the time, all around us. In fact, in the very beginning of this lesson, we talked, I had you visualize your beach, wherever that beach is at, and then I played the Jaws music, and we have people that think about getting eaten by a shark. Okay, there's a reason for that, and it's classical conditioning. You've been conditioned that way. So let's go now into some different ideas, some different things that we will need to know about. Maybe I'll move myself up here. Okay, right there. Some things that we will need to know about for classical conditioning. Okay, this is stimuli. A stimuli, these types of stimuli, there's going to be 5 of them that we'll go through. Stimuli is something that elicits a response. Okay, that's pretty basic, pretty easy. Now, let's go through all these things, and you will actually have to know what this stuff is on the test. Not that you guys care about tests, that's what's awesome. You guys just love learning so much. But on the test, you're going to have to label some of these, and you'll have a little assignment. You'll have to work through that over the weekend as well. So a neutral stimulus is initially something that does not elicit a response, right? It's kind of like you're indifferent to it. Like, for example, I clap my hands. Right? You hear the clap, but nothing really happens. An unconditioned stimulus, or UCS, is something that elicits a predictable response without training. Now, what I mean by that, let's say that you're all hanging out in here, right? And then I go outside, and then I walk in with the best pizza in Dubuque in my hands. And of course that is Casey's Pizza by far. It's not even close. Everyone agrees with me? What is that?
Little Caesars, extra Ghostbusters.
Good God. There's a reason why it's $5.
Because it's good.
No. It's okay. Little Caesars is the only pizza in the world that tastes better when it's left over.
No, that's all pizza.
Okay.
That's just a fact.
What else we got? Happy Joe's, that's our Dubuque answer. Dubuquers love their Happy Joe's. I'm not a native Dubuquer. I like their taco, whatever, but I can go without it. Anyone else want to share?
Meatworks. Happy Joe's Meatworks is the best.
Falbo Brothers is the correct second answer to the best pizza in Dubuque.
I've never been there.
Well, you're missing out, my man. Alright, anyway, I walk out the door, I walk in, and I've got, hot pizza. And what's going to happen from you? What is going to be a predictable response without training? I'm not going to tell you to do this, but you're going to do it.
Jimmy.
Yeah.
What physically is going to happen to you?
Salivate.
You're going to start to salivate. Now, why is that?
Because you're getting hungry.
Why do we salivate when we're hungry?
Because saliva is a natural acid that is produced that helps break down food.
Exactly, right? It's one of the first steps in the digestive process. So when I walk in here with the pizza, your mouth starts to water because your body's prepping for it to be digested, right? I don't have to tell you, okay, now everyone start salivating, right? You can't salivate on command. It naturally happens, right? Now, the unconditioned response is what I just actually talked about. So the unconditioned stimulus is going to be the pizza. The unconditioned response is that reaction, right? Is you salivating because I brought in the pizza. Okay, now let's go to our last couple of stimuli before we give you some examples. And that will be a conditioned stimulus. Now, up here on the board, I've got a conditioned stimulus is what elicits a response due to being paired with an unconditioned stimulus. So for example, let's say that I told you in the very beginning, a neutral stimulus, right, or an unconditioned stimulus is going to be my clap. All right, that's my unconditioned stimulus. But now let's say that every day for the entire semester I had the world's best class. Right? You guys loved coming here because I would clap my hands, and then at the beginning of class I'd walk out and I would bring in pizza. Every single day. Right? Next day, clap, grab the pizza. Clap, grab the pizza. Clap, grab the pizza. Okay? I am conditioning you. Right? Your conditioned response is going to be, after repeated trials of this, I clap my hands, I walk out the room, I grab the pizza, right? But what eventually happens, your conditioned response is every time that you hear the clap, guess what's going to happen to you?
Salivate.
Without me getting the pizza, every time you hear a clap, you're going to start salivating. What's that?
It's like the jog or the belt.
That's exactly what we're learning about right now. We should try it. We should just take turns, right? So Glenn's going to cover the first couple of pizzas, right? We just move on down the line. Guys, remember, I'm going to Barbados. I don't have any money left in my account, so you guys have to take care of the pizza. You will? Yeah, well, you got that brazen money, so you can handle it. All right. Now, let's give you some examples. I've already talked about the clap part, but here's another one. All right, let's see. This is something that's relatable. This is real life. This happens. This is an example of classical conditioning. Our stimulus is a bolt of lightning across the sky. Right? We ever been scared of storms in here? Okay, cool. I like meeting people that can't swim and are scared of storms. They're fun. Okay. But anyway, you go outside. You see this big crack of lightning. Right? What follows a big crack of lightning? Thunder comes, right? And depending on how close it is how loud it is. Right? Last year, we had some pretty serious thunder at one of my wrestling camps, which is pretty awesome. But anyway, we got this big lightning strike. Thunder follows, and this has happened throughout your life over and over and over again. So now, every time that we see lightning, right, we're wincing or anticipating that big thunder boom coming. Right, that's one example, but let's share some other examples. Now, what Charlie said, something about a dog. Okay, this actually up here says Ivan Pavlov. That's a name that we should probably be a little bit familiar with. Pavlov's dogs. We are getting into behaviorism. That's one of our topics from the first unit that we don't really understand exactly what it's all about. We are describing behaviorism right now. This is an example of it. All right, so Ivan Pavlov was actually studying dogs' digestive system, right? Their intestinal tract is what he was studying. But what he stumbled upon was the notion, one of the main tenets of how we learn, which is classical conditioning, right? So what ends up happening, Pavlov's dog experiment, in essence, became that the unconditioned stimulus is going to be food. Right? It hasn't been conditioned. The unconditioned response, right? These are things that we don't have to condition you to salivate. It just naturally happens, right? It's going to be saliva. The dog's mouth starts to salivate. It's going to be paired with a neutral stimulus, which will be the bell, right? Because when you ring a bell to a dog does nothing, right? Just okay, it's a bell. But we're going to condition that stimulus to be having a response from it. So the conditioned stimulus is going to become the bell. The conditioned response is, so here's what ended up happening. Pavlov brought meat powder, that'll get you excited, right, to this dog, right? He was putting meat powder in front of the dog started salivating. He pairs a noise. He had a bell that he would ring. Bell rings, and then he would bring food to the dog. Dog would start to salivate. Bell rings, food to the dog starts to salivate. Bell rings, food to the dog starts to salivate. You know, that goes on for quite a while. But then he rings the bell, dog starts to salivate without the sight of food. Right? It's a physical thing that actually happened in his brain that triggered the mouth to start to salivate, or the dog to start to salivate. Okay, so here's another example of just talking through that, which we're not going to go in depth through, but we got the food here. Dog salivates. Tone and the dog, no salivation, nothing happens. But if we pair it, right, bell, food, dog salivates, eventually the bell will cause the dog to salivate if it becomes conditioned. Now, I do want to share with you an example, kind of a funny example. Here we go. We wanted to share with you an example, but it looks like our audio isn't working. That's super frustrating. Is it because of this? Okay, I'll need one moment to just open this up because it's a pretty good, funny pair. Alright, here it is.
Psych 101 class. I'm David and I'm going to be testing Pavlov's theory of classical conditioning on my roommate Brian. The conditioned stimulus will be this sound effect.
That was easy.
And then I'm going to shoot him with this airsoft gun. He will soon learn the relationship between the sound effect and the shot before it gets too hurt.
That was easy. That was easy.
Ah!
That was easy.
Fuck.
That was easy. That was easy.
Alright guys, looks like Pavlov's theory worked.
Good enough. All right, we get the hang of it.
The office one.
Oh, we have that embedded as well. All right, let's give you another example because examples are great. We want examples. We like examples. All right. Do we have two people that would be our what am I trying to say? Our volunteers in here. Luke, we need a lady as well. No, sorry, you don't have to actually do anything. We just need to use your name. Any ladies? Great. All right. Maybe you were texting Luke. Is that what it was?
No.
All right. These two back here are going to share a passionate kiss. All right. You guys kind of looks like you two up here. This is goofy, but this is true. This is another example of it, okay? This always makes people feel uncomfortable, too, by the way. Now, let's see. What is we've got our stimuli. If you would go to your list really quick, we'll try to figure out how this pairing works. As I talk through the example, what I would like you to be able to do is figure out what's the conditioned stimulus, what's the unconditioned stimulus, what's the response, the conditioned response, the unconditioned response, all that stuff, okay? So, here's our first step. We've got a passionate kiss, somewhere, I don't know. Hopefully not in the hallways, right? PDA is not okay, guys. Okay, passionate kiss, and what happens when you have this passionate kiss? Sexual arousal happens, right? This would be our unconditioned response. Like, we don't have to train you to get excited about this passionate kiss. Okay? Now, let's see. Luke loves his Funyuns. Right?
Don't get me wrong.
You do absolutely love your Funyuns. Now, so Luke slams a big bag of Funyuns and then, sneaks away somewhere and shares a passionate kiss with onion bread. Right? Okay? This happens every single day. They sneak away, share a passionate kiss. He eats a bag of Funyuns before they share this passionate kiss, right? And the unconditioned response is sexual arousal. Right? Now, what ends up happening after repeated trials of this, you've got onion breath being paired with a passionate kiss. The unconditioned response is sexual arousal. once you pair them, onion breath is then going to lead to sexual arousal. Without the kids. Just the smell of Funyuns. Opening up that bag of Funyuns is going to get you all worked up, hot and bothered.
Those kinds of guys.
All right. Now, what ends up happening? Excuse me. What ends up happening here is we should share the act of becoming a conditioned response is known as acquisition. Right? So that acquisition of a classically conditioned response doesn't happen right away. Right? We can't have that guy get shot every time, or that was easy button and then shot, and then every time he hears that, it's not going to happen. Right? It has to have repeated trials. That was easy, get shot. That was easy, get shot. That was easy, get shot. Going through that 5 times, and then every time he hears that button, you don't have to shoot him, but he winces to get ready to get shot. Okay? So, that part is known as acquisition. And we've already talked, you don't have to write this down, because I feel like we've shared a number of examples for you. But to give you a couple more here, anyone deal with cattle at all? Okay, right, so maybe you can relate to this, Clinton, Iowa. Okay, examples of classical conditioning would be using electric wires to keep cows in a field. Right, so the unconditioned stimulus is electric shock. When you get shocked, it hurts. Right, the unconditioned response is that you're going to jump back, like I don't want to get shocked anymore. But what ends up happening to the cattle is the wire becomes the conditioned stimulus, and the conditioned response, I don't go by the wire. So what can happen is once you train cattle that wire is hot, or electrocute them, you can put them into a pen without hot wires, and they won't mess with it. They won't even go by it. Right? So they become classically conditioned. Okay, so let's go to, we'll skip that one. There's an example. Every time, if anyone have any cats? No cats? Alright, we don't have to do that either. Oh, you know what? I will share one example that I have classically conditioned my daughter Sinead into. Is this from my class? Okay? So, my daughter Sinead, she is a little hellion putting her into her car seat. She hates it. She stands up, she arches her back, drives me nuts. Her mom is very good at putting her in her car seat. She's much meaner than I am. Okay? But when I'm putting her in her car seat, the only way that I can get her to want to go in her car seat is I put her in her car seat, she freaks out, and I said, "You want a piece of gum?" Right? And then she loves gum. She swallows. It's probably bad that I do this, but I just give her a tiny little piece. Okay? And then she goes right back in. And I've done this over and over and over and over again. So now, what I have been doing is she freaks out. I go, "Do you want a piece of gum?" She goes right back in her car seat, and then I don't give her gum. So,
That's so sad.
yeah, it's not sad though. She's a snot-nosed punk. Okay. All right, we're gonna watch. Let's see if this one works for us.
So the name.
Right on. We're gonna watch the first 4 minutes of this video clip. It's gonna sum up and review some of the stuff that we've been talking about.
Then Pavlov rings a bell. It's because his experiments are among the most famous in the history of psychology. His work contributed to the foundation of the behaviorist school of thought that viewed psychology as an empirically rigorous science focused on observable behaviors and not unobservable internal mental processes. Even though today we view psychology as the science of both behavior and mental processes, Pavlov's influence was tremendous. His research helped pave the path for more experimental rigor in behavioral research right up to the present day. Born in 1849 in Russia, Pavlov was never much for psychology. After giving up on his original aspirations to become a Russian Orthodox priest like his father, he instead earned a medical degree and spent nearly 20 years studying the digestive system, earning Russia's first Nobel Prize in his mid-50s for his research expanding our understanding of how stomachs worked. He didn't study human stomachs, though, because the procedures were terrible and cruel. He studied dog stomachs, and while researching those dogs, he noticed how the animals would salivate at a mere whiff of their dinner. At first he found all that slobber annoying, but soon started to suspect that this behavior was actually a simple but important form of learning. For us scholars of psychology, we can define learning as the process of acquiring through experience new and relatively enduring information or behaviors. Whether through association, observation, or just plain thinking, learning is what allows us to adapt to our environments and to survive. And as Pavlov began to discover, it wasn't only humans who learned. Soon enough, he was turning out his famous series of experiments in which he paired the presence of meat powder, yummy, which got the dogs to drooling, with lots of different neutral stimuli, things that wouldn't normally make you drool, like a certain sound or shining a light or a touch on the leg. Then Pavlov observed after several of these pairings, a dog would start to drool just at the sound or the light or the touch, even if there wasn't any slobber-inducing meat powder around. Animals, he found, can exhibit associative learning. That's when a subject links certain events, behaviors, or stimuli together in the process of conditioning. This may be the most elemental, basic form of learning a brain can do, but that doesn't mean that the processes behind conditioning are or ever were obvious, or for that matter, simple. In fact, the research that's gone into how we're conditioned by our environments has helped shape the science of psychology from a still kind of subjective thought exercise into the more rigorous discipline we know today. And it starred some of psychology's most notable and often controversial figures, including Pavlov.
We're going to pause there. All right, and actually we'll skip that one. Let's go into one other example here. Another name. You got two names that I kind of want you to be a little bit familiar with. One is Ivan Pavlov, and the other is going to be this John B. Watson character. All right, so Ivan Pavlov, we know, is the guy who accidentally discovers classical conditioning, completely changes our definition of psychology. Whereas it used to be, up to this point in the early 1800s, things that we couldn't see or observe into actual stimulus response observable things, behaviorism. Okay? So this is an example of behaviorism, most certainly. John B. Watson has a quite notable behaviorist study as well, which involves classical conditioning, and it is Baby Albert, or Little Albert, in which, and we'll watch a short video here in a second, he is going to have an unconditioned stimulus of a loud noise. When a baby hears a really loud noise, guess what happens?
Freaked out.
Okay, they start crying, they're afraid, they don't like that noise. All right, the neutral stimulus and what's going to become the conditioned stimulus is going to be a white rat or anything really fluffy. So what he's going to do, he's going to pair that loud noise with that cat, which Little Albert was not afraid of before, but when he made that pairing, he's going to get Baby Albert to be terrified of anything that is furry. This, of course, was not a very ethical field, and actually something kind of bad happened to Baby Albert afterwards. Not from this, but Baby Albert did die. Yeah, sucks, I know. All right, let's get that out of the way. Here's a short little video clip of John B. Watson.
But not everyone believes that biology is destiny. For many scientists, it's your experiences in life that count. Your upbringing, your education, your environment. Chief among these scientists is psychologist John Watson, who offers a theory that is the mirror opposite of eugenics.
This was the heyday of hereditarians and geneticists who said that human beings were constrained by their genetic inheritance. And Watson was saying that this is baloney, that human beings were shaped solely by their environment.
Over the years, Watson studies the behavior of babies, hundreds of them. To Watson, we arrive in the world of blank slate, tabula rasa. Nearly everything is learned. Even things we think are instinctual, like fear. To prove that environment is more powerful than genetics, Watson designs an experiment for an infant known as Little Albert. He's so confident, he films it for posterity. At first, Albert shows little fear, even when Watson places a burning newspaper in front of him. Albert is also unafraid when he encounters a white rat for the first time in his life. But then Watson shows Albert the rat accompanied by a loud clanging noise. One of the few things that upsets little Albert. And he does it again. And does it again. Eventually, Albert learns to fear not just the rat, but all furry things, even without the loud noise. In Watson's mind, the little Albert experiment is a success because it proves that fears are learned, not inherited. Watson calls his theory behaviorism and begins to popularize it. He urges parents to take active control of their children's upbringing by shaping their environment.
All right, we'll pause right here. Okay, we got a couple other ideas that we're going to go into this. We're going to actually practice this here in a second, and then we'll finish this thing up. Okay, taking classical conditioning just a step further, we would like you to understand two terms, generalization and discrimination with classical conditioning. John Watson kind of added and included these ideas to our understanding of what classical conditioning is. Okay, generalization is responding to a second stimulus similar to the original, right? So we said that he is going to pair different furry things until the baby is afraid of everything that's furry, right? So that's part of it. And then the other idea is discrimination. This is when we can tell the difference between different stimuli, right? So if you are only afraid of, white rats and not afraid of white cats, or you're terrified of dogs but you're not afraid of cats, right? Something like that. So you can differentiate or you can discriminate between two different stimuli. Okay. Now, John Watson, who did a whole bunch of really important work into this, he doesn't stay in the field of psychology. He takes these ideas and actually turns it into some monetary uses, right? He wants to make money off of this understanding. So, understanding how people learn, and even when they learn without meaning to, is going to be an example, one place that you can spend a whole bunch of money in that realm is going to be in advertising, right? So here's a great, what does this advertising tell us? Well, they're associating sex and cars and all that fun stuff there. Okay, I've got two other ideas that we want to add to Watson that he kind of helped us figure out. And that's going to be extinction and something known as spontaneous recovery. And this will be, I think, our last notes. We'll give you a video clip and we'll try to practice it and we'll call it a day. Okay? Extinction is the idea that a conditioned response doesn't stay that way forever, right? If I clap my hands and bring pizza in and I do that over and over again and then I clap my hands, you start to salivate, but then the more often, and just the same example that I use with my daughter, right? I've been giving her gum to sit down, gum to sit down, gum to sit down, and now I've been just saying, you want gum? And she's been sitting down and then I don't give her gum, right? I can only do that for a short time because she's going to start figuring out I'm tricking her. Okay? It's going to be she's going to undergo a process known as extinction. When the conditioned response gradually dies out after the conditioned stimulus is repeated without the unconditioned stimulus, right? If I don't continue to give her gum intermittently, she's going to stop believing that I'm going to ever give her gum. Now, this is a pretty interesting idea known as spontaneous recovery. This happens when the conditioned response reappears after a rest period, after it's been extinct. For example, let's say that you were involved in a terrible car accident, right? And you were seriously injured, or someone that you care about very much was seriously injured or harmed or killed even, right? And then you've got this pairing that's been made with cars and death, or cars and incredible pain. So you become deathly afraid of cars, right? Like, you can't drive. It's too traumatic of an experience for you. So what ends up happening is you avoid that altogether. But after some time or whatever, you can ride in the car again. Let's say months go by, and you can start to drive, or you can start to ride with people again. Okay? But One day, a year later, let's say, some random time after the extinction is worn off, after the pairing has worn off, you're getting in the car like you do every single day, and then it just all floods right back to you. You have a panic attack. You start crying. You start hyperventilating. Right? That is known as spontaneous recovery. And this is well documented in cases just like what I said. Right? Like it's worn off, you've got it figured out, and then spontaneous recovery happens. Can't explain it, don't know why, but it does take place. All right, in this image right here, it shows us the acquisition curve, how long it takes to extinct, right? And then there can be spontaneous recovery happening again. All right, I'm going to go into my office watchers. We watched this in the beginning of the...
So the main one,
Oh, sorry, not that one. Maybe I didn't put the office one in here yet. This is Eddie Lizard. Anybody know who this comedian is? He talks about classical conditioning. We're gonna finish with this, and then we're gonna do a little funtivity.
Finally tonight, I want to talk about a guy called Pavlov, who was Eastern European, I think Russian, did the famous experiment, Pavlov's dog. You probably heard it, ringing bells and dog eating food, response times, Pavlovian kind of response. It's all about ice cream. And he wrote these experiments. Day one, Pavlov's dog rang the bell, dog ate food. Very excited. It's got become Welsh, very excited. Terribly excited here in Russia. Day two. Been well accepted here in Russia. Changed my name from Evans to Pavlov. I'm now called Gareth Pavlov. And fitting in well. Day two rang bell, dog had 2 lots of food, very excited. Day 3, right? Day 3 rang 3 bells, dog had a whole bunch of food and my leg too. Very excited, win Nobel Dog Prize for cats. So he did this, he won the prize, Nobel, you know, whatever he won, and Pavlov's dog we all know about. But you never heard his cat results, did you? You know? If you published those, you would have just been finished. Pavlov's cat results. Day 1, rang bell, cat.
Hope no more swear words.
Day 2, rang bell, cat went and answered dog. Day 3, rang bell, cat said he'd eaten earlier. Day 4, went to ring bell on day 4, but cat had stolen batteries. Final day, day 5. Went to ring bell with new batteries, but cat put his paw on bell, so it only made a thunk noise. Then cat rang his own bell. I ate food.
Right. Naughty word, sorry about that. Didn't catch it the first time I watched it. Let's go into this part right here. We're going to practice this ourselves. But why don't we take, because we got like 15 minutes of the class, let's take a short break here. We'll come back, and then we're going to practice this classical conditioning ourselves. We'll explain how this is all going to work. Okay, go take a short break. Let's do this thing.